Welcome to Serial Stories, the podcast where we unravel the most chilling, fascinating, and downright unbelievable true crime tales. Each episode, we explore a theme that ties together the darkest corners of human history, where lives intersect with violence, intrigue, and the unthinkable. Join us as we step into a world where truth is stranger than fiction, and every tale leaves you wondering, what drives someone to cross the line into the unimaginable? The Gift of Death. The Lawson Family Massacre. Christmas is a time for joy, family, and celebration. But for the Lawson family in 1929, it became the setting for one of the most haunting tragedies in American history. A loving father, a picture-perfect family, a snow-dusted farmstead in North Carolina. Everything seemed idyllic until Charles Lawson made a decision that would shatter everything, leaving a chilling legacy that still echoes through time. This is the story of the Lawson Family Massacre. I already don't like this guy. The Lawson family lived in a small tobacco farm near Germantown, North Carolina. Charles Lawson, the 43-year-old patriarch, worked tirelessly to provide for his wife, Fanny, and their 7 children. Christmas 1929 was supposed to be special. Charles took the unusual step of buying new clothes for the entire family and had a professional photographer take a portrait, an extravagant gesture for a working-class farmer in the Great Depression. But what seemed like a gesture of love now feels more like actions of a man who knew what was coming. The day began like any other Christmas morning. The Lawson children, ranging from 4 months to 17 years old, excitedly opened presents in their modest farmhouse. Snow blanketed the surrounding fields, and the family prepared for a traditional holiday meal. To outsiders, it looked like a scene out of a storybook. But Charles, the seemingly devoted father, was harboring a dark plan. Shortly after the family finished their morning routine, Charles asked his eldest son, 16-year-old Arthur, to run an errand into town. Arthur left, unaware that his family request had likely saved his life. Back at the farm, Charles waited for his 2 young daughters, Carrie and Maybelle, to step outside. As they headed toward the barn, he retrieved his shotgun, crept up behind them, and fired. The first shot rang out across the frosty morning air, striking Carrie. Maybelle barely had time to react before Charles fired again. He then bludgeoned their lifeless bodies to ensure they were dead and dragged them into a barn, carefully arranging them with their arms crossed. Do you think the bludgeoning was like a sick satisfaction thing, or do you think it was actually him, like, maybe mercy killing? Inside the house, Fanny was startled by the gunshots. Before she could react, Charles entered and shot her as she sat near the fireplace. His older children, James and Raymond, screamed in terror and tried to flee. But Charles caught them one by one, killing them with ruthless indifference. Finally, he turned to his youngest daughter, Mary Lou, just 4 months old. Unable or unwilling to use his shotgun, he ended her life by bludgeoning her with the butt of the weapon. The once cheerful farmhouse fell eerily silent. Charles carefully placed the bodies inside the home, laying pillows under their heads as if in a grotesque display of care. The baby was cradled in her mother's arms. Then, Charles vanished into the woods behind the house, carrying his shotgun and a note. Hours later, Arthur returned home to a scene of unimaginable horror. The neighbors, drawn by the sound of gunshots, soon joined him. Together, they found the grisly aftermath inside the home, but no sign of Charles. The search for him ended when another gunshot echoed from the woods. Charles had taken his own life. Fucking good. Leaving behind footprints that circled a tree multiple times, as if he had wrestled with his decision. Near his body, a crumpled note read, "Troubles can cause." To this day, Charles Lawson's motives remain a mystery. Some speculate financial stress drove him to madness. Others believe it was premeditated, given the family portrait and the new clothes. A darker theory emerged years later. An alleged confession came from a family friend, which suggested Charles had been abusing his eldest daughter, 17-year-old Marie, and feared his secret would be exposed. The story of the Lawson family has since become a morbid legend. Their farmhouse drew thousands of visitors in the years following the tragedy. In fact, Arthur, the sole surviving family member, capitalized on the morbid curiosity, allowing tours of the home and even displaying the blood-stained walls. That's a little much, Arthur. You probably shouldn't do that. You should probably clean the house. That's whatever. We'll go on to the next one. The Carnation Murders. Christmas Eve Betrayal. Christmas Eve is meant to bring families together, a night of warmth, laughter, and love. But for the Anderson family in 2007, their holiday gathering in a quiet town of Carnation, Washington, became a nightmare. A betrayal so shocking, so brutal, that it left an entire community reeling. This is the story of the Carnation Murders, a Christmas Eve massacre carried out by the last people the family expected to harm them. I wonder who it was. Their home, nestled in the woods of Carnation, served as the heart of their close-knit family. Every Christmas Eve, the Andersons hosted a cozy celebration for their children and grandchildren. That night, Wayne and Judy prepared a holiday feast, their modest home glowing with a string of lights and laughter filling the air. Joining them were their adult children, Scott and Michelle, along with Scott's wife, Erica, and their 2 young children, Olivia, 5, and Nathan, 3. It was a picture-perfect holiday gathering, the kind you'd find on a Hallmark card. But one person wasn't feeling the holiday spirit. Wayne and Judy's daughter, Michelle Anderson, who had been harboring a deep resentment against her family. Just before 5 p.m., Michelle Anderson and her boyfriend, Joseph McEnroe, arrived at her parents' home. They entered quietly, pretending to join the festivities, but they weren't there for Christmas cheer. Michelle, fueled by years of perceived slights and jealousy, believed her parents had mistreated her. She also claimed they owed her money, a grudge that had festered for years. And that evening, she decided to make them pay. As Wayne greeted his daughter, McEnroe pulled out a handgun and shot him point blank. Judy screamed, but before she could react, Michelle turned the gun to her mother, firing multiple shots. Both parents collapsed in their own living room, surrounded by the remnants of their Christmas preparations. The sound of gunfire didn't go unnoticed. Scott and his family arrived shortly after, completely unaware of the carnage awaiting them. As soon as they stepped inside, Michelle and Joseph ambushed them. Scott was the first to be shot, but even as he fell, he begged the killers to spare his wife and children. Fucking go, dude. You are... Scott's a good guy. That's awesome. Not awesome that he got shot, but awesome that he's trying to protect his wife and child even as he's dying. I think a lot of people think they would do that, but when put in a moment of legitimate crisis, the brain reacts in ways that are on par with instinct, and his instinct was protect his family. That's really cool. Michelle showed no mercy. She turned her gun on Erica, killing her as her young children watched in terror. I hope this is a double suicide in the end. Olivia, just 5 years old, clutched her 3-year-old brother, Nathan, sobbing. Joseph hesitated. Killing children was almost too much, even for him. But Michelle, unmoved, forced him to finish what they started. Okay, now I'm just kind of hoping Joseph murders her. He shot both children, and then he shoots himself, silencing the cries that had echoed through the house. In a matter of minutes, the entire Anderson family, 3 generations, were wiped out. Michelle and Joseph spent hours cleaning the crime scene. They dragged the bodies into the back room and tried to scrub away the blood. They even made plans to dispose of the bodies, but a sudden snowstorm thwarted their efforts. Instead, they left the scene and tried to act as though nothing had happened. But their plan began to unravel almost immediately. Wayne and Judy failed to show up for work the following day, raising suspicion among the coworkers. Police arrived at the home to perform a welfare check. A welfare check is something that you can do with literally anybody. If you call the police, you can just be like, hey, I haven't heard from my friend or this random stranger that I don't even really know, and I think they live over here, and I just want you to go check on them. And the police will go to whoever's house, and they will check on the person for you. That's a welfare check. So chances are somebody from work called in and were like, hey, Wayne and Judy didn't show up to work today. They live over here. Can you send someone to check on them? Yep. So the police arrived at the home to perform a welfare check and stumbled upon a grisly scene. Blood covered the floors, and the bodies of 6 innocent victims were piled in a room like discarded holiday decorations. It didn't take long for investigators to link the crime to Michelle and Joseph. Phone records, witness statements, and Michelle's poorly constructed alibi quickly placed them at the scene of the massacre. Michelle and Joseph were arrested just 2 days after Christmas. Both confessed during police interrogations, with Michelle justifying the murders by claiming her parents had it coming. Her calm, detached demeanor during the confession shocked detectives, who struggled to understand how someone could be so cold about killing their own family. In 2015, Michelle Anderson was convicted of 6 counts of aggravated first murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Joseph McEnroe received the same sentence after his trial revealed his complicity in the slaughter. Neither expressed remorse for their actions. They should just shot each other. The massacre left Carnation, a small, quiet town, shattered. The Anderson home was eventually demolished, as the community couldn't bear the sight of the house where such horror had occurred. The lives of 6 people, 2 loving grandparents, their son and daughter-in-law, and 2 innocent children, were snuffed out by greed and a misguided sense of vengeance. Los Feliz Mansion Murder, A Christmas Eve Nightmare. Feliz Navidad. Christmas Eve in 1959 began as a magical night for the Perelson family. I hope I'm saying that right. Perelson. Perelson? I'm going to say Perelson. Who lived in an opulent mansion perched atop a hill in Los Feliz, California. But by dawn, their festive home had become the setting for a grisly tragedy. What unfolded behind those grand walls was not just a murder. It was a chilling tale of ambition, madness, and a family destroyed by its patriarch. This is the haunting story of the Los Feliz Mansion Murder. The Perelsons seemed to have it all. Dr. Harold Perelson was a respected cardiologist and inventor, known for his intelligence and ambition. His wife, Lillian, was a devoted homemaker, and together they raised 3 children, Judy, 18, and her younger siblings, Joseph and Debbie, in a grand Spanish Revival mansion with sweeping views of Los Angeles. What is a Spanish Revival mansion? A Spanish Revival mansion is a large, luxurious house designed in the Spanish colonial revival architecture style, characterized by features like stucco exterior walls, red tile roofs, arched doorways and windows, wrought iron accents, and often incorporating elements from the Moor and Spanish colonial design, creating a warm, elegant aesthetic. This style was particularly popular in the early 20th century, especially in regions like California and Florida. Sounds pretty. So Harold Perelson, his wife Lillian, their kids Judy and Joseph and Debbie lived in the Grand Revival Mansion. Cool, okay. The house, filled with elegant furniture and expensive art, reflected the Perelsons' success. On Christmas Eve, the home was warm and festive. The children were excited for the holiday, and Lillian had to prepare everything for a perfect family celebration. From the outside, it looked like the idyllic scene, but Harold was carrying a darkness that no one could see, a storm brewing behind his composed exterior. In the early hours of December 24th, while the city below lay quiet, Harold Perelson quietly retrieved a ball-peen hammer from his workshop. Ooh, I thought he was going to use a gun. As his family slept, he crept into the master bedroom, where his wife lay sound asleep. Without a word, he raised the hammer and struck her with devastating force. Lillian woke up, but had no chance to scream as Harold struck her again and again, killing her instantly. I could not imagine. Splitting headache. That's all I can say. Migraines, nothing on it. The noise woke Judy, who rushed to her parents' room to find her father standing over her mother's lifeless body. Harold, now consumed by his delusion, turned to her and said, "Go back to bed. This is just a bad dream." But Judy fled, screaming for help. Her cries woke her younger siblings, who stumbled out of their rooms in confusion. As Judy ran down the street to a neighbor's house, Harold turned his attention to his two younger children. Though he intended to kill them as well, he hesitated. Instead, he sat on his daughter's bed, mumbling incoherently about how he was overwhelmed and had made a mess. The neighbors, alerted by Judy's frantic banging and screams, called the police. By the time officers arrived, the mansion was eerily quiet. Inside, they found a horrifying scene. Lillian's body lay in a pool of blood, the hammer discarded nearby. Harold was slumped in a chair in the master bedroom, dead from an overdose of Nembutal and tranquilizers. All right, hang on. I'm looking it up. Nembutal belongs to a barbiturate class of drugs. Barbiturates are CNS, central nervous system, depressants, also known as sedative hypnotic drugs. So they're downers like Xanax, it seems, or something like that. So they found him dead from an overdose of Nembutal and tranquilizers. He had taken his own life shortly after failing to harm his younger children. Well, I'm glad he failed. The children, though physically unharmed, were left to grapple with the trauma of witnessing their father's descent into madness. They were quickly whisked away by relatives, leaving the mansion empty. As investigators pieced together the story, a motive began to emerge. Harold had been struggling with his financial ruin. A failed medical invention had drained the family's savings, and he was embroiled in a bitter legal battle with a business partner. Friends later recounted that Harold had suffered a nervous breakdown months earlier, but had insisted he was fine. There were also signs of deeper instability. A book found on Harold's bedside table, Dante's Divine Comedy, was open to a passage about suicide and despair. This chilling detail hinted at his deteriorating state of mind in the weeks leading up to the murder. The Los Feliz mansion never recovered from the tragedy. After the murders, the home was sold, but no one ever moved in. For decades, it sat untouched, its rooms filled with the Perelsons' belongings as if frozen in time. Holiday decorations remained boxed up in the basement, a haunting reminder of the Christmas that never came. The mansion became a local legend, attracting thrill-seekers and ghost hunters who whispered of eerie happenings within its walls. Some claimed to hear the faint sound of hammer blows, or Lillian's muffled screams. The Covina Massacre, Santa Claus Brings Hell. In 2008, the Ortega family's holiday celebration turned into a scene of unimaginable terror. When a man dressed as Santa Claus knocked on their door, the family expected laughter and gifts, not death and destruction. What followed was one of the most horrific holiday crimes in American history. This is the story of the Covina Massacre. The Ortega family was well loved in their community of Covina, California. On Christmas Eve, they gathered at the home of Joseph and Alicia Ortega, the family patriarch and matriarch. Their children, grandchildren, and extended family, 25 people in all, filled the house with laughter, music, and holiday cheer. The Ortega home glowed with Christmas lights, the living room centered around a towering tree piled high with presents. The night was filled with warmth and love. The adults exchanged stories over drinks while the children played with their new toys. For the Ortegas, this is what Christmas was about: family. But just before midnight, their joyful evening was shattered. The doorbell rang. 8-year-old Katrina Ortega ran to the door and peeked through the window. Outside stood a man dressed as Santa Claus, holding a large, gift-wrapped box. Excited, Katrina opened the door, shouting, "Santa's here!" What do you guys think about an 8-year-old opening a door, answering a door? I think that's too young still. I think like 11 or 12? I guess it depends on where you live. I think for me, like 12 at the youngest. Anyway, what stepped through the doorway wasn't the symbol of Christmas. It was death. The man dressed as Santa was Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, the ex-husband of Joseph and Alicia's daughter, Sylvia. Pardo had been battling bitterness and rage since his divorce from Sylvia earlier that year. He had lost custody of their child and had been ordered to pay a substantial spousal support. Instead of moving on, Pardo spent months planning a brutal act of revenge. Dude, plan how to get more money for a better lawyer. You don't have to kill people. Just lawyer up, dude. Like, that makes no sense. People are stupid. The gift he carried concealed a homemade flamethrower with multiple firearms. Holy shit. Without hesitation, Pardo pulled out a handgun and began shooting. The family, caught completely off guard, scrambled for cover. Chaos erupted as Pardo fired indiscriminately, striking adults and children alike. Once the gunfire subsided, Pardo opened the gift-wrapped box, revealing his flamethrower. He sprayed gasoline throughout the living room and ignited it, turning the Ortega home into an inferno. Flames roared through the house, trapping those who had survived the initial attack. As the fire consumed the home, Pardo slipped out the back door and drove away, leaving behind a scene of carnage. First responders arrived to find a house engulfed in flames, with screams faintly audible from inside. By the time the fire was extinguished, 9 members of the Ortega family were dead, either from gunshot wounds, burns, or smoke inhalation. The youngest victim was 17, and the eldest was 80. Police quickly identified Bruce Pardo as the suspect. His car was discovered 30 miles away in Sylmar, packed with explosives intended to destroy it in case someone tried to investigate. But Pardo never activated the booby trap. Instead, he returned to his brother's house, where he died by suicide. Single gunshot to the head. Good. Inside Pardo's car, investigators found evidence of his meticulously planned attack, including maps of the Ortega home and a list of targets. It became clear that he intended to kill his ex-wife's entire family, burn down the home, and escape to Canada. The massacre left Covina, a small suburban city, in shock. The Ortega family, who had brought so much joy to their community, was wiped out by an act of senseless brutality. Survivors grappled with immense trauma, particularly young Katrina, who had opened the door for her family's killer. The tragedy also cast a dark shadow over Christmas in Covina. The house was demolished, leaving an empty lot where the Ortega family's joyous celebrations once stood. Each year, the community gathers to remember the victims and to reflect on the fragility of peace during the holiday season. The Covina massacre is a chilling reminder of how bitterness and rage can lead to unthinkable acts. On a night meant for love and togetherness, Bruce Pardo unleashed his fury in the most horrific way imaginable. The Ortega family's story isn't just about the loss of life, it's about the loss of innocence, as a symbol of Christmas itself became disguised for pure evil. The murder of Ed and Minnie Morin, a Christmas Eve mystery. Christmas Eve, 1985, was supposed to be peaceful for Ed and Minnie Morin, an elderly couple from Chehalis, Washington. Known for their kindness and love of family, the Morins were prepared to spend the holidays with their children and grandchildren. But instead of celebrating, their family was left searching for answers as Ed and Minnie became victims of a chilling crime that still haunts their small community. This is the story of the Christmas Eve murder of Ed and Minnie Morin. At 81 and 83 years old, respectively, Ed and Minnie Morin enjoyed a tranquil retirement on their farm in Lewis County. Married for decades, they were well loved around their small town. Ed, a former logger, was known for his generosity, and Minnie was a beloved homemaker who delighted in hosting family gatherings. Their Christmas plans for 1985 were simple yet heartfelt. They'd invited their children and grandchildren over for a holiday meal, something Minnie had been excitedly preparing for weeks. But on the morning of December 24th, neighbors noticed something strange. The Morins' front door was ajar, and their green sedan was missing from the driveway. Family members grew concerned when the Morins didn't answer their phone. Police were called, and a search began. Inside the house, nothing seemed amiss, except for signs of a struggle near the phone and an empty shotgun case. That seems like a lot to be amiss. A struggle near a phone. Hours later, Ed and Minnie's car was found abandoned in a nearby parking lot. The interior was spattered with blood, but there was no sign of the couple. Oof. On December 26th, 2 days after the disappearance, a passerby discovered the Morins' bodies in a wooded area off a remote logging road. They had been forced to kneel before being executed with a shotgun blast to the back. But where'd all the blood in the car come from? Their death shocked the small, tight-knit community and left everyone wondering who could commit such a heinous act. Evidence suggested that the Morins had been abducted from their home and coerced into withdrawing $8,500 from their bank account. Witnesses reported seeing Ed driving his car with Minnie in the passenger seat and an unidentified man in the back. But leads dried up quickly, and for years, the case remained unsolved. Lack of progress frustrated the Morins' family, who refused to give up hope. Over the years, rumors swirled about local criminal activity and potential suspects, but no arrests were made. The quiet town of Chehalis was haunted by the brutal slaying of two beloved residents, and the case turned cold. It wasn't until 2012, 27 years after the murders, wow, that's older than a lot of you, that the case finally cracked open. Advances in forensic technology and a renewed push from investigators led to the arrest of two suspects, Rick Rife and his brother John. Rife. Matt Rife. We're on to you. The Rife brothers, known troublemakers in the area, had long been rumored to have been involved, but had moved to Alaska shortly after the murders. Wow, that's not suspicious. Witnesses came forward, placing the brothers near the Morins' home on the day of the crime. One witness recalled seeing the Rife brothers acting suspiciously near the abandoned car. Others claimed Rick boasted about getting away with murder. Though John Rife died of natural causes before he could be arrested, Rick was extradited to Washington to face justice. In 2013, Rick Rife was convicted of first-degree murder, kidnapping, and robbery. Prosecutors argued that the Rife brothers targeted Ed and Minnie because they were elderly and vulnerable. Rick showed no remorse during the trial, even as family members of the Morins tearfully recounted their loss. Rick Rife received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. While his conviction brought a sense of closure, the Morins family and the community of Chehalis remained deeply affected by the tragedy. The couple's murder had shattered the town's sense of safety and left a dark mark on their Christmas memories. Every Christmas Eve, the Morins story is retold in Chehalis, not as a tale of tragedy, but as a reminder of the resilience of a community that refused to let the couple be forgotten. A plaque honoring Ed and Minnie stands near their church, where they had once celebrated countless holidays, surrounded by family and friends.